Good. Whenever you're ready.
Good to go.
Good to go? You on record?
Yep.
All right, sweet. Sweet. All right, I think we kind of have everybody coming in here now, and we're pretty well settled. Great room. We'll go ahead and get this started. Everybody out here on time. I'd like to first of all introduce myself and kind of the topic here. We're going to talk about cloud security vision and really how to make cloud work from a security perspective and what's really working out there in the industry. So we'll talk about several things, just some high-level pieces. Certainly challenging the vision. We'll talk about just cloud as a concept for security. Then we'll kind of relate it to effectively testing our own security. And then we'll talk about the overview of Zscaler and how things fit in. My background, kind of in and out of technology from Juniper and Microsoft and others on the technology side, but actually most of my information security experience certainly over the last 15 years or so has been working in the large enterprise space. I was at McKesson as there it's called an IT risk leader. Basically, I covered one of their major lines of business. There are 12 of us in the company, big Fortune 10 company right now. And anywhere else I would have been called a CISO there. It's an IT risk leader. There's a corporate CISO. But I ran all the security programs. So that meant I ran security for about 75 software products, as well as a very sizable managed services business. And then strategically across the company, I like to say I led the security efforts for cloud from A to Z. So that'd be from Azure and Amazon Web Services to Zscaler on the end user side. So that's me, as well as having co-authored some books and a bunch of other presentations and everything from a security perspective. Now, when we look at security, I like to say everybody needs to have a vision of where they want to go. Where do you see security going? So that we know how we're going to get there, right? And we can start to build a roadmap. So I did this little exercise some time ago, probably a year or so ago. I said, well, if I could just pick three things, and this is deeply personal to me, others might have a slightly different variation. Some of this might be, yes, this is exactly what relates to me as well. But if I could ask myself just three questions that would maybe transform my security vision, what would really get things to make sense to me and to some of my peers? I came up with these questions. And first one, real simple, am I seeing all that I should? We know from what makes the news, from a security breach perspective and all the attention that all sorts of things get out there, it's not just the act that somebody managed to penetrate a network that gets the news. It's the fact that they stole data, right? They're now, the bad actors are in possession of so many millions of records or whatever. That's really the challenge. So the question is, can I actually see that? If somebody's taking my data, can I actually see what's going on? So if we look at it from, and this could be to any scale, but I just picked the United States here, and say the blue dots are my major data centers, the green dots are my spoke sites, basically my branch offices, and the red might be merger and acquisition, it might be some important office, but it's not joined to my network. At best, it's a bunch of people there that may be doing a desktop VPN session into the office. So it's really not under a whole lot of governance and control. So then I look at that first question and look just at data loss. I'm not talking about DLP applications or technology or anything like that. Just, can I really get my head around data loss? Well, if I'm looking kind of at those blue dots, I can say, well, on the network, I'm maybe 80% covered. That's the blue, the green, and the red. Just looking at the balance of things in maybe a standard large enterprise. So, well, 80% of the traffic I'm actually seeing on a day-to-day basis, which is not bad, right? Certainly would a grade like that, 80%, would get us all through K through 12 and college and everything else, right? Maybe keep our scholarships. But then we look at off the network. What level of protection do I have off the network? Can I see anything that's going on, right? Inside the network, yeah, I have this beautiful rack and stack of appliances and all my traffic's going through it. But when I leave the network, I get nothing. And then, to make matters worse, even when I'm back on the network, I might have zero visibility into SSL. We'll talk more about why that's so important here in a couple of minutes. So overall, when I ask people, I say, well, what's your effective level of DLP, data loss prevention capabilities? Everyone pretty much nods and goes, yeah, maybe 0 to 20%. That's how effective our programs are. Is it any wonder then that we see company after company wind up in the news and come to find out that they didn't even know their data was gone until somebody informed them externally. So that's one. Number two here is, am I delivering the right user experience? Well, this is historically, this has been almost at odds with a lot of the security paradigms. Well, security is going to take priority. We're not so concerned maybe about the user experience. Things have changed, though. I think we've all seen that. They've changed quite drastically. Many of you would remember 8, 9 years ago, whenever Apple came out with the iPhone, anybody that had a mobile device in the network, typically director level and IT people, would have maybe a BlackBerry. iPhones came along and Androids, and I saw it time and time again, meeting with peers and everything across the industry, and everybody's like, I'm not letting those on my network. They're just forbidden. I'm not letting them. It's not going to happen, right? But in fact, what happened was all the IT departments, and certainly the security departments, just got steamrolled. It did happen, right? It's the user experience. This is what the individuals wanted. It's I want to use Evernote. I want to use Dropbox. All these things are at odds. And the reason is the user is looking for the right user experience. So am I able to deliver the right user experience? If I go back and look at the same map, one of our very largest customers actually shared this with their CIO, shared this analogy with our CEO, and he said basically, what would, looking at data loss again, what if there were only 2 airports servicing the entire world, right? Or in this case, the United States. Meaning, if anybody had to go anywhere to launch themselves anywhere else, they could only travel between these 2 airports, right? Then they would have to get in a car, they'd have to go somewhere else, some other mode of transportation to get them elsewhere. And that turned out to be a great analogy for what hub and spoke looks like, even from a security perspective, and I'll share that more as we move on. And the third one is my IT program helping beat my competitors? We've all heard a lot in the news that the board is suddenly interested, because they're maybe interested at the board level for any company. Now they're responsible, they realize they're responsible and accountable for that level of risk, the business risk that brings along IT. That's brought along by IT. So they're also wondering, is it helping beat my competitors? Has anybody ever watched the show Mad Men, AMC? It's okay, you can admit it. Yeah, I got a couple brave people around here. There's a second, I didn't see the last season because we cut the cord, got rid of all our cable and everything in the house, but in the second to the last season, they decided, this was back in the 60s, Madison Avenue, they were building all their different programs and what have you, trying to beat all their competitors. So what they did is they went and bought a big IBM mainframe, they put it in. As soon as you walk in the office, it's off there to the right. And for a very brief period of time, very brief, they held a competitive advantage. They spent a lot of money on it, but they could parade it around to their business constituents, and they would go, yes, we believe your data analysis, everything else is ahead of the competition, we want to go with you because there's an implicit, we're going to get more out of you. But then as soon as that starts to succeed, what do you think all the competitors do? They flood to it, right? They flock to it. I've got to have it, I've got to have it. But then as soon as they've all got it, and this happens very fast, what do you think happens right after that? They all try to get it for less money than their competitors. Well, the new version's out, but I've been able to get it so much cheaper than my competitor, and it goes on and on and on, because now it's commoditized. Everybody has it. It's by definition a commodity. So now let's get it as cheaply as possible. And that's really just the name of the game. Those are the cycles that everything goes through. It's a very brief period of time with any technology where you can actually outmaneuver your competition by getting it ahead of them, but then they'll catch on and away you go. There's actually a very brilliant paper written on this. This is somewhat dated, actually, but it's out in the public domain. It's called IT Doesn't Matter. Very provocative title, right? Harvard Business Review, though, came out with it. It's provocative just, I think, to get people to read it. But, of course, IT matters. We know it does. But what they're talking about here is that, and I have several quotes, but You can go read the paper for yourself. It's in the public domain. You don't have to pay for it to get a reprint or anything like that. It's at least off the web. You can read it right off their website. I guess it's because it's aged out a little bit. They're not protecting this one so much. But what they talk about here is what makes this resource truly strategic, what gives it the capacity to be the basis for a sustained competitive advantage is not ubiquity, but scarcity. So what they're saying is, it's not how much IT that you have that makes you competitive, it's how little, how very little. If you can have less IT and resources as part of your armament, you're in better shape. So if you go back to boardrooms out there, the boardrooms are all of a sudden, they've come alive and they're very alert to the need to secure their business. If anybody thinks that that means that, hooray, we now have a blank check from the company to buy every appliance out there, every piece of software out there, and we're going to get into a nuclear arms race when it comes to technology, and that's going to make us more competitive, that's completely false, right? The business leaders, especially the board members, they're more than likely, and I've seen this play out time and time again, they're more likely to put everything under a microscope and take your $10 million budget this year, make it a $9 million budget, next year make it an $8 million budget. Because what they're saying is, I need you to be hyper efficient, I need you to take the security level up to here, but at a cost that's down here. And if you can't figure out how to do that, I'll find someone that can. And that's why you've seen this huge shift, even before security became the hottest topic, perhaps in a lot of boardrooms. Even before that, the shift was already happening. We saw with Office 365 and Salesforce and all these other cloud-based applications starting to take the resources that were inside the data center and move them externally. Doesn't mean anybody lost their job, certainly in the enterprise space. It's just the way you did it became more efficient, right? Less time racking and stacking servers and replacing failed hard drives and stuff like that. Just instead manage those systems and do it extremely well was the name of the game. So a lot of different perspectives in this paper, but one of them is saying that you get more value when you have something that's shared. And this paper will go into great lengths to explain the various concepts around the power grids, the telephone systems, the rail systems, and say that there was a brief period of time that companies were building these things out themselves. They built their own communications networks, they built out their own rail networks and what have you. Very, very quick. And then everybody realized, well, we need to have this as a shared medium. Can you imagine if every company out there decided to go build their own switched phone networks at a global scale? Right? How would that even work? Right? It's multi-tenant. You get it from your carrier, you get it from AT&T, Verizon, Orange, BT, whoever that may be. And that's really what they talk about at great lengths here. It's that take the commoditization, turn it into a true shared platform, and then you get the greatest amount of value. And then finally talk about companies who can see this is to their advantage, and that's where the boards getting involved in security are seeing this as potentially being to their advantage. They know that if they can outmaneuver their competitors and get it for better security at lower cost, they wind up winning, right? It's now a sustained competitive advantage. All right, so that's kind of, those are my three big questions. Again, you might have some others or some variations to that, but they consistently work in pretty much every discussion I'm in. Now, I'm not going to run these tests here right now. I encourage you to do so at some point on your own. But what I do want to show you, I'm going to show you another screen here in a second. It shows you how to run a good security test. You know, if you just look at some of the data that's out there, this is from a KPMG, kind of there in the bottom, you can see this. But 93% of organizations were affected with malware that had command and control traffic going on, right? 93%, that's huge. But somebody's important, I'm not that good. 52% of malware coming in the network was unknown to antivirus vendors. Again, not that surprising. You've probably read some articles already, maybe some of your companies are taking the approach already that I'm just not going to maintain antivirus on my desktops, right? Some notable companies have taken that approach because they've factored in risks and they're looking at other things. Maybe they've mitigated that particular risk for their environment. I'm advocating that that's a strategy for blanket strategy for anybody. But some of these numbers certainly come into play, right? Malware coming in is unknown to antivirus vendors, 52%. Well, okay, clearly it's not that effective. And 79% of organizations were experiencing data exfiltration. Again, staggering number, but it goes back to that first question. We're not really seeing, actually the first and third question, not only are we oftentimes not positioning ourselves to be successful in looking for data lead in the organization, our users are going around us to leverage the things that give them the best user experience. So they're leaking it out on their own. There's a test on our website. I encourage you to run this. It's over on the main webpage. One scroll down, you'll find it. It's also securitypreview.zscaler.com. It's a great little test. It's basically what it's doing. It's looking at two main buckets from a security perspective. The raw security test and a compliance test for, say, PCI, HIPAA, that sort of stuff. And then the more raw security, cross-site scripting, data loss, what have you. And the tests are very simple, and there's really no way to gain it from a marketing perspective. If you disagree with any of the findings, it's easy enough to validate. You look at your own firewalls, you look at all your own security controls, and see did those other appliances actually, were they successful in stopping whatever was going on? It's all there on the wire, so you could begin to hide anything. But what it will do is it will go out and it will run a test to see how well your security is playing, right? You spend a lot of money on all these appliances. Is it actually that effective? So you want to run that internally, right? Inside the network, where I've spent the greatest amount of security, that first 80% score is where you want to look. But then you also want to test it again off the network where that 0 score was, right? Where I don't oftentimes have any security controls outside my network. Am I able to block any of those threats? And when you run those two and you compare them, and I can encourage you to run those even on a monthly basis, you'll come to realize that, hey, look, yeah, is this something that I would take to my board? Is this something I'd take to my CISO, or if I am the CISO, would I move it up the chain? Could I defend this if this was found in discovery after a breach and we were getting sued? All right, could I defend that score? Very important questions to be able to answer. So, talking a little bit more about where we come into play and the kind of vision that we have here is really making the internet safe for business. Oftentimes I'll ask everyone, it's like, if you could buy a clean internet pipe from your ISP, would you? Right? If you're going to say, just give me, I don't want the ugly internet that the rest of the world has. Right? I don't want a bunch of bad malware and everything else going through the internet. By the time it reaches me, I just want it clean. Would you buy it? Well, of course. Everybody goes, well, yeah, as long as the price is fine, right? As long as there's competition in the marketplace and I'm not paying a ridiculous sum of money for it, of course I would. I'd be stupid not to. Well, the carriers know this, right? They know this. The problem is that while they can solve it directly for their customers, it doesn't solve the problem of the mobile device. So when I go home, when I go to Starbucks, when I go here to this conference, I'm leveraging somebody else's internet pipe. So unless every internet provider out there is always offering a clean internet pipe, per my company policies that they've set, it doesn't really work out. That's where Zscaler comes into play, is being able to handle this. We do it extremely well. Those of you from the Gartner and Forrester, you'll see that Zscaler is certainly the most visionary on the Gartner rankings, and we're the only ones moving up and to the right. Everybody else, at least in this cluster, or at least in that cluster there, is actually moving down into the left. So we're distancing ourselves, certainly every year as we get the new Gartner reports. And then Forrester has us ranked very highly. If you read the Forrester report, they'll actually, they have a very bold statement. They're saying within the next couple of years, the Zscaler model of security will not be the exception, it will be the rule. The same as things are moving from on-premise Microsoft deployments to Office 365 is where security is going. And they're being very clear about this, and as is Gartner. Even last week we made an announcement, had a round of funding, and Google has backed Zscaler. They're going back a couple, I understand 2 security companies in all their funding years, and Zscaler is one. So huge praise and realization that this is the future. And we'll talk more, but we have over 5,000 customers now, some of you in the room. This one, I like John, because John, I found out only after I came over to Zscaler, he actually had basically my job when I was at McKesson years ago, and then he went and became CISO at Zscaler. Most of you probably don't know Zscaler, they're out of Florida. 200,000 employees over there. They're a bit of a big shop, right? They make a bunch of appliances and stuff like that themselves. Some of you probably have seen or have attended the Information Security Executive Awards that are out there. But the ISE Awards that go on every year in every major region are peer awards, right? So you get top CISOs from top companies. You submit, here's how well we did in security, here's all the stuff that we built. And then they go and weigh in, and whichever company had the best program wins this coveted award each year. Well, they won. I was actually at the event when they won it. And what they said, and there's a video out online, actually there's two. There's one on the ISE website and one on our website, two separate videos. But what he said was quite remarkable. They completely, radically transformed their information security capabilities to the tune, and they quantified it, to the tune of $1.5 million a year saved on just security incidents alone, right? Not having to refresh PCs and wipe them and do their investigation. So $1.5 million savings there, while also positioning IT and IT security as a business enabler. It goes back to that Harvard Business Review stuff, being able to let the business see that there's value in this, and the value they equate is actually lowering the cost while making the enterprise much more secure. So some great videos. I encourage you to get a chance to look at those. As far as, people are like, well, how big is Zscaler as far as being able to scale? Well, and I know this is an eye chart for those of you in the back, but I'll show you the high-level stuff. In terms of number of employees protected, the National Health Service out in the UK, big healthcare, has 1.6 million users on a daily basis going through Zscaler. It's one customer. Below that, the entire North Carolina school system, 1.3 million students on a daily basis go through us. General Electric, Nestle, the list goes on and on. That's in terms of number of employees protected. Then we have across countries. We have 100 data centers around the world. So through those 100 data centers, we're protecting companies like British American Tobacco, Nestle, Philips, again, GE. 185 countries alone for British American Tobacco. And then across locations, 30,000 locations for just looking at Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And this was all rolled out in a matter of weeks, being able to roll out that many sites. Same thing with GameStop and Kelly Services, Edward Jones, et cetera. Can you imagine if you had to go to 30,000 locations and deploy a bunch of security appliances and manage all those? Impossible, right? But they were able to do it, just send a box out, it routes through Zscaler and the way they go. We do this with 100,000 data center, 100 plus data centers. We'll get to 100,000 here in a second. 100 data centers worldwide, right? We've really nothing a chance. We have the capacity there. 13 billion transactions processed every day. And I don't have the official numbers for one, and I think they're actually being revised to 15 billion now after the last couple months. But it's, from my understanding, Google is like a third of that as far as the number of searches they do. So, number of multiples more in the amount of traffic that we process as far as all the flows go. 100 million threats blocked every day. So if any of our customers, being a community of customers, if they see any pieces of malware, it immediately is protected for all the customers. And then, of course, we have about 25 or so threat feeds where we're taking information in constantly, and we're updating these 100 data centers 100,000 times a day for any threats that we might see. And you can see that 100,000 security threats and 100% system uptime, which is quite remarkable, but not really. If you can imagine, if you went to your carrier, you went to AT&T or Verizon or whoever has your phone service, and if you were to say, well, first of all, when was the last time anybody here got an email or a written notification that your phones in your neighborhood were not going to be available on Saturday night from like 3 to 4 a.m. because they're going to upgrade the software? Anybody? Well, it doesn't happen, right? You can't have that. If you're a true service provider, if you're a cloud provider at that scale, you can't have that. So we actually run a website called trust.zscaler.com. Gartner praises us highly for this, where we tell everybody the current statuses of all the cloud nodes across the globe. Our VP of Cloud Operations will happily say, if you ever go there and you see green lights across everything worldwide, somebody's lying, right? Because the reality is behind the scenes, there's always some route that's down, there's some undersea cable that's cut, there's something, there's some peering congestion, there's something going on. But there's a big difference between you having to manage that and the routes are redundant and everything just continues to flow, right? So that's kind of the high level build out there, if you will, of the cloud itself. Now, there are some mega trends that are going on. Certainly mobility, cloud applications, mobile devices, and the Internet of Things is becoming very real. I know one of my colleagues and friends in the healthcare space is CISO for a pretty good-sized healthcare system. He'll tell you when he's in a room that he's not worried if Health and Human Services or whoever has him on a wall of shame because they lost a couple medical records. It's terrible. He'd probably lose his job for it if he live with himself, right? If he's doing his due diligence, he's doing his job right, something just crazy happens. He can live with that. What he can't live with is that telemetry system pumping somebody's heart after a surgery if it kills the patient because either somebody intentionally hacked it or somebody was doing what they thought was a safe port scan, looking for vulnerabilities, whatever, and it kicks that offline, right? Because it's all Internet of Things enabled. So he's thinking ahead, right? He's thinking, how do I make sure that all these systems are always protected? Very real challenges for people. We've all seen the stories, I think, of baby monitors being monitored by others across the web and what have you. But very real security concerns out there. And in the past, 10, 15 years ago, security wasn't that big of a deal, right? Certainly not to the attention that we see it today. The Internet was a simple enough problem, simple enough times. All my stuff was in my own data center, and I could deal with the outliers. I could deal with the things that were out there. Let me skip through this and just get to this next one. So what do we mean by the outliers? Well, on the left here, what we'll see is this is a fairly typical way that we've built networks for the last, certainly all the time I've been doing, the last 20 years or so. And we're all very intelligent people for doing it this way. So, well, we want to be smart for the business. We want to do right by the business. So did we build a data center at every single branch location? No. Right? We built one big data center. We did hub and spoke. We got cheaper sonic ring and MPLS and everything else. We bring it back in. And that's smart, right? Pat ourselves on the back. It's very smart. Cost-effective way of handling not only security, because we can also only concentrate our security appliances in that location. So it worked, and it continues to work. And honestly, things haven't changed that much. Really, the thing that's changed is our data center is no longer just inside the network, it's out here as well. Office 365, Salesforce, the list goes on. I did a big exercise, the last company I worked for, a big exercise, took me an afternoon. But I went to the corporate intranet page, and I just started looking at where all the links that I hit, where are they going, right? Did I click on anything? A couple SharePoint things internally, those were all internal, at least at the time. Eventually things all go to maybe Office 365, hosted SharePoint. But all the links that I was hitting, corporate training videos, payroll, all the human resources stuff, wow, they were all outside, right? Really, everything I could find on that intranet page was directing me back out to the internet. And I was like, wow, where's my data center, right? Certainly we have a lot of boxes still there, but it's split. It's no longer so clear that all my stuff is internal. In fact, more and more every day, we've all run into CIOs, or I certainly have for years now, that said, even going back 2 or 3 years ago, said, we're a cloud-first operation. If only when I know I can't consume it as a cloud-based service, will I buy that application internally, right? And that's the application stack. We're seeing securities going the same way. Now, I've been with the company with Zscaler now for a year in December. This slide was available when I first came on, and honestly, I puked all over it. I said, I'm not showing that, right? That's just a noisy, ugly network diagram, right? And a bad one at that. But then somebody explained to me straight away, said, well, here's what it actually is. I said, no, Kevin, you don't get it. Here's what it is. This isn't our slide. This was handed to us by a customer. They said, you should use this. And what they did is they counted up all these different boxes, and what they, this is an eye chart for you in the back, but 28 hops on the round trip. Ding, ding, 3-way handshakes, go on, go, 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 go. Can you imagine if anything goes wrong anywhere in that process? How do you troubleshoot it? How do you manage this, right? If there's a software update here, what might it do there? It's expensive, right? Not only that, this entire stack, if you go back and look at those security tests that I was advocating earlier, they would easily show that not only was this only marginally successful, it didn't capture everything. When the users went off the network, it got nothing because it wasn't even in line, right? And then they realized, well, we're moving more and more stuff to the cloud anyway. We need those security controls and what have you to still be in line. And that's really the big piece of that story. So we understand we need to have security around all this, right? Go from the red to the green. And we need to have the data centers worldwide because these are the threat vectors, right? It's almost like being an epidemiologist these days, just looking at all, where are these viruses and malware and exploits and command and control, you name it, where are they actually coming from? Well, you need to have global coverage if you're going to have any hope of getting some perspective around that. And of course, what we're seeing, and this is data from our customer base, looking at the data that we glean from our own cloud operations, we're seeing this is a fairly standard customer, and you can see here 0.03% is advanced persistent threats. And you go, well, that's actually a very small number, until you realize that those are typically the nuclear bombs of your security world. It's really going to cause you some challenges. But cookie stealing, 2.1%. Viruses, less than 1%, right? Go back to the need for viruses and what have you. The bottom line is that we're seeing these attack vectors just all over the place. And it's not just one, it's being able to see everything conclusively. Encryption. We all know SSL encryption, right? It's great. Get the little lockbox. We're secure, at least we're private to a certain degree. But SSL encryption is today, in this year, it's 35%. It was forecasted by the end of this year. I haven't seen any updates on the numbers yet. When I do, I'll update this slide. But it was forecasted by the end of this year, the internet, 50% of the day-to-day traffic would be SSL encrypted. By next year, they are putting some targets out there saying 60% of the internet. Probably very realistic when you consider that EFF has just they're right about to launch their Let's Encrypt program, which is free SSL certificates for the world, right? You just go and request a certificate and load on your box because they want every single website out there to leverage encryption, right, for privacy and general security. And that's great. The problem is, how do you look at that traffic, right? If 60% of your traffic leaving the organization is encrypted, certainly you can imagine that, as we've seen, 54% of advanced threats actually hide behind SSL. If I'm an attacker, of course I'm going to leverage SSL to send it out. You're blind to it. You can't see it, right, unless you set yourself up to see it. And that's really the harsh reality of where we are. And there are other drivers that are driving that number up. Google, for example, is only going to offer or is giving higher search rankings on your search engines if you're a company if that site supports SSL. So a lot of factors going into it, and then what you see is turning on, and the reason a lot of companies haven't done it, turn on SSL encryption, is they've come to find out that the stack of security appliances, they might have to buy up to 8 times, oftentimes I see it's about 4 times, but up to 8 times the number of appliances just to take that additional load, right? You just blew the security budget and the whole IT budget just focusing on one thing. So these compromises are being made. Are the board members aware that these compromises are being made? And that they've signed up for that level of risk? Well, I don't know, right? Probably not in most cases. But then we also see strategies that are based on alerting, just simply alerting are doomed to fail. And we can see this time and time again that a lot of data here, I can't remember who did this one, it's in the footnotes over there, the Verizon one, so sorry I couldn't see with the glare. Bottom line, time to infection is taking seconds. Exfiltration is taking minutes, so seconds here to infect, minutes to exfiltrate, and discovery weeks or even months to actually discover. Oftentimes because somebody comes and knocks on your door and says, FBI or somebody like that, and says, hey, we found your data in the lab, right? So what's that all about? And then you go, oh my goodness, now I've got a mess to clean up. So we want to protect this as much as possible ahead of the game. And this is testament really to the fact that there are some things that can only be detected through technology such as sandboxing, what have you, where you can actually get in line and see deeply what's the threat actors, whoever wrote that now, or what they're actually trying to exfiltrate. So, looking at some of our data again, we can see out of 300 billion transactions in a month, we stopped 1 billion threats were immediately stopped. Close to 600,000 were sent to our cloud sandboxes, and then 8,211 advanced security threats were automatically detected and blocked. I like to use the analogy for this one of that of a neighborhood watch. Right? Everybody that's a Zscaler customer is part of our neighborhood. Right? Everybody who's sending traffic through us is getting the benefit of all their neighbors on the same system. So if there's anything that's detected by one customer, there's a patient zero sort of situation that's out there. Kevin Peterson, I'm traveling to Hong Kong, LA, whatever. I get an email, I'm tired, it looks legit. I click on it. Oh, that was weird. Screen flash, well, probably not been quite as I'm tired. Meanwhile, my system's compromised and the threat actors are off to the races. That's certainly a real problem, but wouldn't it be better if I could just block it? And not only that, because I'm the first person that's ever in the world, certainly in the Zscaler world, that has ever seen that piece of malware. Gee, wouldn't it be great if we could detect it and then send, within a second or so, update all the enforcement nodes around the globe so that the very next person, whether or not it's in my company or anybody else's, anybody in the Zscaler umbrella in our neighborhood, if they click that, they're immediately protected, right? We'd have to scan it again. They get the value. And that's remarkably different than everybody stands up their own security and no one ever shares any information. And you just don't get those network effects from a security perspective. So some more scary stuff out here. I hope nobody in this room has ever had any of the, what do you call it here? The pay, you got to pay up the extortion emails, right?
It's crypto malware.
The crypto malware. I hope nobody has had it. I've had to deal with it, especially in multiple cases where customers and end users and what have you have had it. And it's being able to get ahead of these kind of mega trends of security is really what comes into play. So we can talk about how do we secure all this. So we're kind of getting down to the end here. But what do we need is, well, we don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. So the first thing is implement a platform strategy for your internet security to reduce all the gaps. Right? Am I protecting my users anywhere when they're off the network? If not, that's a pretty big gap, right? If they're taking a corporate asset home or on travel or what have you. So you want to be able to have the same level of security and controls really off the network, at least the core stuff, as you do on. And that's not an antivirus, right? I think we beat that up enough. Just having antivirus and a firewall on the laptop is just not going to cut it. And then blocking the threats, not just alerting at it, but blocking them. Being able to say, look, patient zero is detected somewhere in the world, so the very next person who tries to download it, they're already covered. That's huge, right? I'd much rather block something than ever have to go clean. Deploying SSL encryption and sandboxing, specifically aiming at the patient zero. Right? It's something that everybody, certainly everybody who's architecting security services these days should be focusing on. Can I stop patient zero? if I'm the first one in the world to ever see something, can I actually stop it? There's an ugly little truth with security appliances that burns so many people out there. It's that from a security appliance perspective, and we don't do this on the Zscaler side, we scan on Zscaler, we scan everything in and out, always. We don't compromise. We're SSL encrypted, we've looked inside of it once it's configured for that, and we scan it. Because what we don't want to have is a situation that there's, things can sneak through. So I'll give you a great example. There was a piece of, you can search this online and see the story, but somebody decided to be really smart with a phishing attack. They sent an email out, said, hey, congratulations, you've been privately selected to look at the latest version of Google Chrome. All right, great. I'm a security guy. Let me look at the link. It's on code.google.com. It's a Google website. SSL certificate checks out. I like it. Let me go ahead and download this great new version of Chrome so that I can see it ahead of the rest of my peers. I go ahead and download it, and I'm infected. What just happened? The problem is code.google.com, which is now defunct. Google shut it down. But it was a website like GitHub, code repository. Right? Anybody could store stuff out there. But it looked totally legitimate to everybody else. Even a security person that might not be a developer would look legitimate. So it came through. Well, not only that, the security appliances out there, in order to optimize their efficiency, get their data sheet numbers as high as they can, they actually stand down. It's what's called fast path versus slow path. Fast path is, I trust things from Google. I trust things from Akamai. I trust things from Apple. I trust things from the top CDNs in the world until you realize that half of the internet traffic comes from CDNs, content delivery networks. And by implicitly trusting them and basically doing less invasive security because you're trying to increase your performance numbers, you let things like this through. You didn't get through to any Zscaler customers because we don't care where the content comes from. It has to go through full inspection. The reason we can still scale when we do that is quite simple. Once we know it's a bad piece of code, bad block, we write a hash for it. Real simple. And then we check, even if it's a large download, we check every so many bytes as it's being downloaded, do any of these hashes match. If we see a match on something we've seen before, it could be a 30 gig file that somebody's downloaded. It only takes a couple blocks of data to come down and see the hashes match and go, we know what the rest of that traffic looks like. I don't even have to scan it anymore. I'm just going to block it right now. So the company doesn't use that bandwidth. We don't burn our CPU cycles. It's just a different way of processing the security. But if we didn't have that built that way, things would get through. And that's why you see a lot of technologies that are, well, let's put it in tap mode and let's clean up the mess later. No, we want to just knock it down and not have a mess to clean up to begin with. And that's kind of the J-hole story if you go back and look at that. And of course you want to have a regular process to identify and re-image those devices that do get infected. If we're scanning all the traffic that's coming in and going out, and something gets infected, what happened, right? I can tell you I've had to work a lot with developers in the past, and developers tend to be very creative individuals, and they tend to bypass a lot of security controls. And honestly, for the most part, I'm generally okay with that. I understand the nuances of working with developers. But if they're doing risky things, if they're not doing risky things, it's not really that big of a problem. But if they're doing risky behavior, then they bring something in, then you want to be able to identify those rapidly and go back and maybe retrain them, or maybe just tell them, it's like, you do this again, you are going to get, there's going to be some HR action or something like that. But it's being able to detect that. We have a real process. But even then, you don't want to spend, you don't want that to be your entire life, just dealing with exceptions that are out there. And certainly don't trust anything. I talked about that a fair amount here, just in the previous bullet points. Just don't trust any of the traffic. Right? If it's traffic that's coming to or from my network, from a user's perspective, just scan it. Right? Don't compromise on it. Scan it. And that's what those, kind of some of those security preview tools I was sharing with you will test. Right? When we run those security preview scans, we're actually, and they're testing even your own security appliances that you may have deployed before. They're testing them to see, are they letting through some of these content delivery network bits and pieces of traffic, right? The fast path, not the slow path. Are they actually doing their jobs or aren't they? Oftentimes they're not. So the way we handle this is dead simple. We secure halo, if you will, around the internet. If you're going to anywhere on the web, doesn't matter where your location is here, it could be Starbucks, wherever, regional offices, wherever you're at, you're going through one of our 100 data centers, as signified by the blue ring there, to get there. And it's all built on one big platform. So the SSL inspection, the logging, all of that is on one platform. So if we're going to add any additional features, such as the web security, and that's your typical proxy, web content filtering, protecting you from legal liability, websites, gambling, that sort of stuff, that's there. Advanced persistent threat protection, being able to look at the whole sandboxing of the technologies or the software that's coming down. Next generation firewall. We can take all ports and all protocols. The difference for us, we already have the platform. This platform, you can almost relate this to our appliance, although we don't have that. But you can relate this to something that we're building on top of. And the next generation firewalls, all ports, all protocols, you just route GRE or IPsec, you route all the traffic to us, and you just go into a web console down here in the platform, the unified administration. You just create your policies. For us, it's dead simple. What did we have to do to build a next generation firewall? Well, we had to put the deep packet inspection engine in. All right. That was easy enough. Did we have to build an appliance? And we have to go get it FCC and UL certified, and we have to go get all these other outward certifications? No. Our platform is already ISO 27001 certified. Right? We've already got the proof points with healthcare and government and finance and everything else to show that from a due diligence perspective, a vendor assurance perspective, that we've done our amount of security due diligence ourselves. So to build this stuff is fairly simple. You instrument it on through a web page. You set it up that, hey, it can already take all the traffic. I just need to do the inspection, and it allows us to iterate that much faster. It allows us to update the software every single day if we want, actually 100,000 times a day if we want. And you never have to endure a downtime notification. You never have to swap a hard drive or anything like that that may have failed. Data loss prevention is also in there. The cloud application visibility and control, being able to see what the users are actually doing, what applications are going to. I know a friend of mine was puzzled one time where he went to a new job, and they said, well, you have to use this other certified cloud-based note-taking service. All right? Well, he was a fan of a different one. From his previous job, all his notes were in there. So, not to be outdone. Of course, his favorite one was blocked by the corporate proxies and what have you. No big deal. He built a static route on his laptop, set it to go to off of his wireless network. Anytime he wanted to, he still typed his notes. Anytime he wanted to sync to his iPad, he hit the switch on his laptop, Wi-Fi, hotspot, all scripted straight through to his LTE on his mobile device. Everything was synced right up. Right? Users can be very creative individuals, especially when you're working with developers. And then even things like Wi-Fi protection. But the list goes on and on. I'm sure you get copies of this presentation. I like to throw a lot of these data points in, just showing how much data we see on a daily basis. That's quite phenomenal. And then the fact that you can see everything through one unified platform. And this is, just in terms of business, this is what everyone has come to realize, is that when you look at security, 10% tends to be on appliances and what have you. 10% is really the initial purchase of an appliance. Then the rest comes on with how do you manage that stuff on a day-to-day basis, right? So what we've seen is our costs are dramatically lower. That's why Jabil and these other companies have flocked to us, because they've seen that the amount of CapEx and OpEx that they actually spend throughout the year goes down. And the two schools of thought. I've seen I'm the Director of Security Network Transformation, so I work with all the large customers that we have and really kind of figuring out what's working and what's not. I've seen some that go to the nth degree, very analytical. They want to calculate how much money they're going to save and then take it up the chain and get that approved. And I've seen others go the complete opposite direction, where it's like, we know this is the future, it's clear this is the future, let's just do it. And then what we expect to see in a year or two is we'll see our margins getting better as far as the business of IT. Expand, we get better opportunities, we're cutting down on help desk incidents, and things kind of fall into place there. Both are great. I can talk, if anyone wants to spend some time with me after this, I can go in depth on the pros and cons of each. I can do a whole presentation just off that with the information that we've gleaned, but it's great background nonetheless. And being able to eliminate backhauling of internet traffic was the last one. I ran out of time, so I want to skip to that last one. We're actually out of time now. That was the end of my slot. I'll be here if you have it throughout the rest of the day. If you have any questions, I'll stay up here for any questions. But thank you very much for your time.